Now,
It's time to boogie, oogie, oogie, because we made it through another week. And we've got a doozy of a show for you, including a How We Got Here segment featuring the truly unique early history of Manitowish Waters. We'll get to that in a bit, but first, here's your top four at 4.
Welcome back to Up North at 4. We are continuing our How We Got Here series with our first series name, What's in a Name? And today I am joined by Jim from the Manitowish Waters Historical Society. Jim, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Today we're going to be talking about the name Manitowish Waters, but I first want to just set the stage. So just tell us about the early history of the area and the community that we now know as Manitowish Waters.
Well, Manitowish Waters for thousands of years with the Ojibwe and other First Nation communities was Highway 51. Folks traveled on the rivers and the lakes, and we have strong Ojibwe seasonal communities right here on the chain. Through the treaty process, the chain's property began to transfer to initially logging companies. First, the River Drive logging companies that had an extensive camp right in downtown Manitowish Waters for the Mississippi River Logging Company, and then later for railroad logging that also took place throughout the area. As the loggers and the timber cruisers were assessing the land and harvesting the forest resources, certain pioneers began to call this place home. They were no longer the transient workers. And at that time, we have the development of our resort industry, guides, and a lot of great traditions. And it's starting about the 1880s, we see those guides, and by the 1890s, resorts starting to emerge in what is now Manitowish Waters, Wisconsin. But we went through quite an evolution in our identity in those early years.
All right, Jim. So we kind of have an identity forming right now. Like you said, pioneers are starting to settle down in the area. Let's bring us to the first name, seems like of many names that Manitowish Waters went through.
Well, Manitowish Waters in the 1890s was part of the Lac du Flambeau Township. And that, again, goes back to those strong Ojibwe roots within our community, linked with the trade routes and Lac du Flambeau itself. Seasonal villages existed on certainly Rest Lake and Manitowish Lake that were affiliated with Lac du Flambeau. The community itself continued to develop for some time and began to prosper within the chain of lakes. And Lac du Flambeau and what is now Manitowish Waters is actually separated by a pretty significant swamp, which made travel between the two areas a little bit more difficult. And then there was a movement in 1927 to create a new township called Spider Lake. Spider Lake would be a 6 by 6 miles traditional township, and it was based right at the narrows between Manitowish Lake and Spider Lake as you travel on Highway 51 between Greer's Pier and the Blue Bayou. And that community sprung up, and it was formally established in 1928. It's interesting, though, the name Manitowish Waters was used as branding for the area starting in 1900 by some of those early pioneers and resort owners, particularly the Buck family, George Washington and Fayette Buck. They created two maps, one in 1900, one in 1905, that really branded the chain of lakes as Manitowish Waters. It went along with some of their other resorts up in what they called the Turtle Waters, which is now Winchester. But moving back to Manitowish Waters, we had an anomaly, a strange circumstance in that we didn't have a post office. And our post office officially was Manitowish, where the train came. We did not have our own train depot here, which makes us unique too. So ultimately, the idea was we needed to have our own post office and our own identity. And by 1939, we thought that Manitowish Waters would have to be adopted as our new name because there was already a Spider Lake, Wisconsin. So in 1939, they renamed our township and our community Manitowish Waters.
So there was going to be Spider Lake, but just because there was another Spider Lake, Wisconsin, they had to change it, and they went with Manitowish Waters, which I'm assuming is based on the name of the nearby lake. Can you tell me the origin of the word Manitowish?
Yeah, that's really a matter of some debate here within the community, and I'll give you a couple of citations that we have. First of all, there is a legend that is predominant that Manitowish, Manitou, there's no debate there, that means spirit, but the term wish, some believe that it was part of a Ojibwa chief who was a war chief that had a summer residence on Manitowish Lake. And indeed, there is an Ojibwa village on Manitowish Lake. Well, he was notorious for being troublesome, and they named it Manitowish. And the Manitowish chain, the Manitowish River, all those names started to appear in historic maps in about 1832 and were really quite consistent. But there are other sources for other interpretations for the name of Wish. One from the Wisconsin Historical Society means that it translates to lodge or animal lodge. That also is found on the Ojibwa People's Dictionary, comes up with the same definition. Another definition that comes from the Wisconsin Historical Society says that wish means weasel or muskrat. So we have a little local legend, some stories, and some different sources that really lend itself to this debate.
So Manitou means spirit in Ojibwe, and it sounds like wish could have three possible definitions from what people understand. Or more, that's right. But the three common ones you mentioned would be wish, referring to kind of a notorious chief,
Yes.
or a lodge, or a muskrat/weasel. Is that right?
Correct.
Jim, anything else? We finally made it to Manitowish Waters in, was it 1927?
No, that was Spider Lake. We transitioned in 1939 from Spider Lake to Manitowish Waters.
Got it, 1939. We're finally here at Manitowish Waters. So thank you for bringing us on this journey. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
There are amazing stories associated with the community of Manitowish and Waters and the surrounding communities. And we invite folks to explore those on our websites and online, and to send us any questions they may have at the Manitowish Waters Historical Society.
All right, Jim, thank you so much for joining us on Up North at 4 in our How We Got Here series.
Thank you.